interesting facts about famous people.
Great duels in 1950s westerns. Arguably the peak decade for westerns, certainly the most prolific both in cinema and the new medium, television. Little was more exciting about a western than a duel, an invention of Hollywood. The duel was rare in the real Wild West. Hollywood found it made for great cinema. Who could argue that? I can't fit all the great duels into this video. Let's take a look at a sample today. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit the notification button to get my new videos. If you want to check out my other videos, head over to my channel. The link is in the description. Let's get into it. The Big Country, 1958. Director, William Wyler. A New England sea captain in the 1880s arrives at his fiancée's sprawling Texas ranch, where he becomes embroiled in a feud between two families over a valuable patch of land. Who can forget the duel between Buck Hennessy, Chuck Connors, and James McKay, Gregory Peck, adjudicated by Rufus Hennessy, Burl Ives, James McKay's father? Didn't work out so well for him. Stars Gregory Peck, Gene Simmons, Carol Baker, Charlton Heston, Burl Ives.
Go ahead. Fire! Go on, shoot! Fuck!
The Gunfighter, 1950. Director, Henry King. Notorious gunfighter, Jimmy Ringo, rides into town to find his true love. Who doesn't want to see him? He hasn't come looking for trouble, but trouble finds him around every corner. The beginning of the movie depicts this very well when a young Richard Jekyll, as Eddie, tries his luck against Gregory Peck's Jimmy Ringo, setting off the rest of the story. Stars Gregory Peck, Ellen Westcott, Millard Mitchell, Gene Parker.
Are you ready to back up that remark or not? Mean no real harm, Mr. Ringo.
And let Eddie keep his big ugly nose out of my business if he don't want to get it slapped. Did you see that? Yes, sir. He drew first.
High Noon, 1952. Director, Fred Zinnemann. A town marshal, Gary Cooper, despite the disagreements of his newlywed bride and the townspeople around him, must face a gang of deadly killers alone at high noon, when the gang leader, an outlaw he sent up years ago, arrives on the noon train. In 1951, after 25 years in show business, Gary Cooper's professional reputation was in decline, and he was dropped from the Motion Picture Herald's list of the top 10 box office performers. In the following year, he made a big comeback at the age of 51 with this film. Stars Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly, Thomas Mitchell, Lloyd Bridges. Shane, 1953. Director, George Stevens. A weary gunfighter, Alan Ladd, in 1880s Wyoming, begins to envision a quieter life after befriending a homestead family with a young son who idolizes him. But a smouldering range war forces him to act. Shane's fancy gun twirling in the cinematic showdown was actually performed by Rod Wedwing. Earlier, when Shane demonstrates his prowess for Joey, and it is clearly Alan Ladd himself on camera, the actor had been given a different, easier-to-use revolver for the scene. Stars Alan Ladd, Jean Arthur, Van Heflin, Brandon DeWilde, Jack Palance. Fara Cruz, 1954. Director, Robert Aldrich. During the Mexican Rebellion of 1866, an unsavory group of American adventurers are hired by the forces of Emperor Maximilian to escort a countess to Veracruz. This film is sometimes called the first spaghetti western, due to its reputed influence on Italian directors such as Sergio Leone, who popularized the genre. One of director Robert Aldrich's personal favorites of his films. He particularly enjoyed that the story had both a hero and an anti-hero, the third of 4 movies Gary Cooper made in Mexico. Robert Aldrich said that there was a total improvisation on the set, because the sequence script was finished short before a scene was shot. Stars Gary Cooper, Burt Lancaster, Denise Darcel, Cesar Romero. Last Train from Gun Hill, 1959. Director John Sturges. A marshal tries to bring the son of an old friend, an autocratic cattle baron, to justice for his role in the rape and murder of the marshal's Native American wife. During the final shootout, Morgan was supposed to beat Smithers to the draw. However, the actor playing Smithers, Brian G. Hutton, kept beating Douglas to the draw. Finally, it was decided that Kirk Douglas should be holding a shotgun, thereby ending that argument. Afterwards, Douglas remarked, "Can you imagine that upstart beating me to the draw?" Anthony Quinn said, "Don't worry about it, Kirk. We'll get him in the editing room." Stars Kirk Douglas, Anthony Quinn, Caroline Jones, Earl Holliman.
Raise him good, man.
Seven Men from Now, 1956. Director Bud Botticher. A former sheriff blames himself for his wife's death during a Wells Fargo robbery and vows to track down and kill the 7 men responsible. This film was the beginning of a collaboration between Randolph Scott and the director, Bud Botticher, that revived Scott's career. They made 6 more films together until 1960. Scott himself credited the film with reviving his dead career. Starring Randolph Scott, Gail Russell, Lee Marvin. The Tin Star, 1957. Director Anthony Mann. A cynical former sheriff turned bounty hunter helps a young, recently appointed acting sheriff with his advice, his experience, and his gun. Bounty hunter Morgan Hickman arrives in a small town with the body of an outlaw, seeking the bounty, while the general townsfolk openly abhor Hickman. Young Sheriff Ben Owens, while angry with Morg for not bringing the wanted man in alive, also admires him for taking everything in his stride and knowing how to handle dangerous situations. Starring Neville Brand, Henry Fonda, Betsy Palmer, Anthony Perkins. Warlock, 1959. Director Edward Dmytryk. A famous gunman becomes the Marshal of Warlock to end a gang's rampages, but is met with some opposition by a former gang member turned deputy sheriff who wants to follow only legal methods. Director Edward Dmytryk tells in his biography that Hank Fonda was such a fast draw with his 6-shooter that he, Dmytryk, had to slow up the action so the audience could savour it properly. Henry Fonda would go on in 1973 to play gunfighter Jack Beauregard, a gunfighter with a reputation for cleaning up crime in the spaghetti western comedy My Name is Nobody, 1973. Starring Dorothy Malone, Henry Fonda, Anthony Quinn, Richard Widmark. The Left-Handed Gun, 1958. Director Arthur Penn. After his employer is murdered by rival cattlemen, A troubled and uneducated young cowboy vows revenge on the murderers. Paul Newman is widely felt to be miscast as Billy the Kid, since at 33 he was considered older than the character. Billy was supposed to be 18 at the beginning of the film. The film originally was to have been made in 1956 with James Dean in the lead role, based on a true story. Starring Paul Newman, Lita Milan, John Dana. The Fastest Gun Alive, 1956. Director Russell Rouse. In the western town of Cross Creek, George Temple is a polite and soft-spoken man with a secret. When bank robbers on the lam stop in town to change horses, George's past comes back to haunt him. Despite his reputation as the fastest gun alive, Temple states emphatically that he's never drawn on a man. That would put him at a significant psychological disadvantage to Harold, who shoots to kill every time. Harold also fanned his gun 3 times, usually a desperation measure because fanning makes it difficult to steady the gun on the target. Glenn Ford, along with John Doucette, who is also in the picture, was a legitimate fast gun with a sidearm. Starring Glenn Ford, Gene Crane, Broderick Crawford.
George Kelby.
Interesting facts about famous people.